Good morning, MP. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Arrow. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, my wife and I both agree that you are the master of creating a hook. I just would love to sit in a room with you and watch you bring your paragraphs to life because I want to know how you're finding this way to locate these hooks.
Arrow, you made my day. I appreciate that. You're more than welcome to observe sometime.
Is it like painting on a canvas? Because I mean you write it and then you sit back a little bit and then you observe what you're doing.
It's funny you should say that because I am actually an oil painter and I've been doing that for about 25 years. It's a way that I relax, and it is very much like that. You have to cover a canvas so that there's no white, and you can kind of step back and see what you're looking at, and then you add layers of detail and build it up, as opposed to writing intricate detail right from the beginning.
The book is The Handler: Twists, Fractured Love, Darkness, On the Edge. Boy, what's going on inside your head?
Spies, lies, and sabotage. What was really going on inside my head was I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to dramatize some of the fantastic people that I've met over the years, that I had met in a prior life as an intelligence officer, and really create a drama from their point of view that humanized things. And I wanted to try to draw out the characters in such a way that whether they were the protagonists or the antagonists, the reader could really understand why they thought the way they did, and that the reader could get emotionally involved with them and suffer their challenges and celebrate their successes.
It's almost like you place your readers inside the story. It's because I mean, when we're inside those paragraphs and things like that, it's like, oh, I'm here with them. Oh, thanks for the invitation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a concept I would call interiority and getting inside a character's head. And honestly, I spent some time in the video streaming industry with Amazon, and one of my takeaways from that as a lover of literature is that while you can make really great content with video, the thing that a book has that video doesn't is that you can really live the life of the character. You can really spend a lot of time in their heads because you've got the freedom of words and pages as opposed to just one visual scene. So that is just something that I like to do, and I think it helps when you go to create the plot. I think it helps the people move the plot as opposed to the plot moving the people, and therefore hopefully feel a lot more realistic.
Well, a lot of us have been in the same place as Meredith in the way that she gets that phone call and she thinks it's going to be the termination phone call when she arrives at Langley, but it's a different story.
Yeah, it's a different story, and I really wanted to show with Meredith it was important to me to dramatize a female character that had a lot on her plate and that was really, really super driven. And many of the women that I've worked with over the years have been so impressive with all the various things that they have on their plate. And so I wanted the reader to experience Meredith's emotions as she's headed back and thinking that, oh boy, I'm going to get fired. And then, as you know, since you've read the book, that she doesn't get fired, but she gets this assignment to go and recruit her ex-husband, and that she's effectively furious about that she feels that, here I am, someone who's smart and articulate and headed up the ranks, and the only reason I've been called back now is to go and recruit that I divorced about 2 years ago. And so I wanted the reader to kind of experience that range of emotions that Meredith had in that moment.
Are you listening to music while you write? And the reason why is because the way that the mole wants to get out, and he's got good reasons to be, to get out. But I mean, it's almost like there's like a dun 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 always going on inside these scenes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you should ask that. I actually I don't so much listen to it as I write. Well, it depends on the definition of write. If you have fingers on keyboards, I don't listen to music then.
Okay.
But I think a lot of writing actually takes place in your head. And for me, I live in the mountains in central Washington State, and that means a lot of long walks and thinking about things. And for those, I did develop a soundtrack that I would take through to visualize various scenes, because I find that music can really, really heighten emotion and really help sharpen the mental picture, so that when you go back and do put your fingers on the keyboard, it makes a lot more sense to you.
Are you long form at all, or are you with a writing instrument, or is it strictly the keyboard?
It's strictly the keyboard, and as the book has come out, I've had to sort of like write thank you letters and things like that, and I realized, man, I can barely get through a paragraph with a pen in my hand. I'm so used to the keyboard, and I think that one of the discoveries that at least to me in writing this book is how much you go over chapters and rewrite things.
Yeah.
People sort of have a vision that the writer sits down at the typewriter and just bangs it out, and there you go. And for me, it's a matter of layers. I probably didn't even think the book felt complete until about the third draft or so.
Yeah, because I do a thing that's called fermenting. I'll put put the words together, and then I set it aside for 1 or 2 weeks, and I can come back as the reader and not the writer.
That's exactly right, and that process is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can. I call it the day after test. Right? You actually need a few days, but there's a balance, I think, between if all you ever do is try to get something perfect, then you never move on.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like, hey, write it ugly, just make the story happen. And it's almost like building scaffolding around a story, right? Like there's going to be things that are going to come out later, and they're probably going to come out later. And so that happens in the rewrites and the edits to make it a lot cleaner. But when you're doing it, it all sounds great. And you reread it in that moment, and it sounds great. And then you come back a few days later, and you can feel like, well, that's totally subpar. We're going to have to redo that one. But it has helped you. It has certainly helped you get it out of your mind, and it has certainly helped you develop the relationships that needed to be there.
The book we're talking about is The Handler. When you started this book, Russia was a different place on this planet.
Yeah, one of the things in the book that you'll note, and I footnoted everything in the draft, so the final reader doesn't see them, but there's many references to real world events. This book really takes place in about 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't involve what we're seeing today, but it does involve a number of real world events. I am proud, though, that I think the Russian operations within the book and one of the geopolitical contexts that sets off the drama is their relationship with Iran, and you are seeing that today as the world brings sanctions against both Russia and Iran for uranium enrichment. That you see those two countries getting together in an axis with China, and some of that comes through in the book.
Are you like most U.S. soldiers in the way that they have to turn it in to the government so that you're not putting something out there that is top secret?
Well, I was very careful to not touch on anything that's classified, and one of the things that has changed in our world is the availability of information. So as a former intelligence officer, I certainly know how intelligence comes together and can portray that in a fictional way among characters. The information itself, though, is generally fictitious. And in our modern world, there is so much of what we call open source intelligence. There are. I mean, even when you're reading, say, the New York Times, and they show a satellite picture in Ukraine of Russian forces, which we see a lot of today, mm-hmm. You'll see that those come from private companies, and those are available to private individuals. Oh, wow. So wherever possible, I tried to use generally available internet technologies that drove the characters, but made it feel like it was some kind of a classified program.
Wow. You've got to come back to this show anytime in the future, MP. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you, Arrow. I would be delighted to do so.
You bet. You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you very much, Arrow.